Hello, lords and ladies. Today we are looking at the main causes of World War One. The main causes being the long-term causes for the war, meaning the things that were going on for many years that lead up to this war breaking out. So to begin looking at this, we're going to start with some pretty simple objectives today. We're going to look at identifying and explaining each of the four main causes, and when you see a word like that, you know that that's an anagram, so each letter stands for a word. We're going to be able to identify the members of the alliance structures, the Triple Entente, the Triple Alliance, and we're going to be able to define Pan-Slavism. So if you need to go back, you can pause it, and you have more time to write those items down. The M in our anagram main stands for militarism. Militarism is when a country, well, it has several aspects, but really it's when a country is going to build up its military and be on constant verge of going to war. They're being prepared all the time for war. European nations during this time engaged in a massive military buildup, and the problem is that when one country starts to build up their arms, and then other countries start to do so as well, you might want to pause it, and that leads to this arm race, and because everybody's racing to create these new weapons, you see military leaders get more and more power during this time. So militarism is one of these key causes that we're going to look at. The next key cause of the main A is for alliances. And alliances are typically good things. They're friendships, they're good relations between countries in that they support one another in case a war does break out. And the idea being that we can keep the peace. Again, you might want to pause it for a moment. But you can keep the peace because if there's four countries banded together, the idea being that the two smaller ones won't attack. It's a deterrent. But the danger is when there's so many of these allies together, a tiny thing that started between two countries can then balloon to become an issue between many, many more. And that's exactly what we're going to see happen as we see these alliance structures come into play. European countries form these alliance partnerships so that they can protect themselves, but unfortunately it is also going to lead to the issues that we're going to see. So what are the two alliance structures that are in opposition at the beginning of this war? You have the Triple Entente, that's Britain, Russia, and France, and the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy. When the war breaks out, the Triple Entente is called from this point on the Allied Powers, and you might want to pause it again. But that's Britain, Russia, France, and then later on in the war, the US and Italy get involved. Triple Alliance becomes the Central Power. So in World War I, it's Allied versus Central. Central being Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and what's left of the Ottoman Empire. So that would be the formation of the alliance structure. So we're going to take a look at what this is going to look like on the map. How does this mean that European countries are currently poised and positioned? So you see the blue there is the Triple Entente, and the red is the Triple Alliance. You can see why they're called the Central Powers. They are in the center of Europe, and that's one way to kind of look at it, between France and Russia, right? Britain is out there as an island. As we call them the Allied versus the Central, this is what it starts to look like. So you see that Italy did not actually honor that alliance at the outset of this war, and we'll talk more about that in the coming days. But that's one map. Here's another where you've got the neutral countries. And again, this just gives you the same basic idea. This is the Triple Entente, Triple Alliance layout. And remember, Italy is not going to actually get involved. So it will be Germany, Austria, Hungary against Great Britain, Russia, and France. The idea of an alliance, again, make this deal that you will help and protect each other. Now, another reason why some of these alliances may not hold comes into play when we talk about imperialism. The I is for imperialism, and the idea that we've talked about this imperialist ideas and how the foreign countries related, they were competing with each other. Britain and France, Germany is one that's going to feel very, very slighted because they're industrialized, and yet they are not able to capitalize on that strength. They don't trust one another because they're fighting for the materials, resources, and all of that. So all this tension is going to build up over time, particularly between Britain and Germany and France and Germany. And Germany is going to feel as though it's being kind of kept out by those two countries, even though they do have a sizable empire of their own overseas. So here you can see a depiction of British imperialism going into Africa for the resources, again, gold that we talked about. In the next cartoon, or next map, you're going to see how all these countries, right, you can see the Germans in that darker brown, they have a much smaller piece of the pie and they're a little bit angry about it. This is overseas European empires, again, tremendous amount of control exercised by Great Britain and then France, and Germany not getting as big a piece of the pie and being slightly unhappy about it. You know from dealing with your friends that in cases where money gets involved, sometimes your friend stops being your friend and money takes over, and that's really what imperialism is about. Okay, the last letter in our acronym is the N. The N is once again going to stand for nationalism. So nationalism, as I promised you guys, comes up over and over again in global studies history. And that's because in the world it has been a very, very significant force. You might want to pause it so we don't have to spend much time to write. But what you're going to see is that the Franco-Prussian War and the things that Bismarck had done to unite Germany are still kind of open wounds for France, and they lose Alsace-Lorraine to Germany. The next issue will be Pan-Slavism, this idea of all Slavs sharing one common nationality and being united in one country. Russians are largely a Slavic people, and as such a large Slavic nation, Russia feels a duty to kind of protect the other Slavs. This Pan-Slavism is going to come into play when we talk tomorrow about how this war is going to start. This is Alsace-Lorraine. You can see it's on the border between France and Germany, and it is the contested territory that France is angry about Germany having taken. That's going to come up in the Treaty of Versailles at the end of this war. Nationalism, as you see, right, the leaders get the people riled up behind them, and they're actually leaving them over a cliff. And World War I is a really good illustration of that. Again, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, all of these things are going to ignite into the larger fire that will become World War I. So when we look again at all of these things, nationalism, right, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, these are the things that will erupt into war, and these are the things that have been going on for decades now that are going to have these countries angry with one another. Thank you, and I look forward to talking more about it with you in the coming days. Good night.